The alarm bells rang through the Coalition Command Center for the third time that day. Hana pressed her six-fingered hands against the cold metal table and stared at the red lights flashing across the galaxy map. 12 more systems had gone, dark in the past week. 12 more worlds turned into silent metal graveyards. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked without looking up. Her voice was tired. She had been asking the same question every day for 3 months. 237 operational vessels, replied Commander Vex, his blue skin pale with worry. The 7th Fleet lost another dreadnought yesterday at Kepler 442. The machines got it with their planet crackers. Hana closed her eyes. The 7th Fleet had started with 50 ships just 2 weeks ago. Now they had less than 20. The Vorthak Empire was not just winning this war. They were ending it. The Vorthak were machines, pure metal and circuits with no mercy and no fear. They moved from system to system like a plague, turning every living world into a factory. They took the people and processed them into fuel. They took the plants and turned them into building materials. They left behind only dead rocks covered in metal towers that reached toward the stars. "What about the 4th Coalition?" Hana asked, though she already knew the answer. "Gone," Vex said quietly. "The last transmission came 6 hours ago? They lasted 3 days after the machines arrived." Hana opened her eyes and looked at the map again. Red dots marked dead systems. There were so many red dots now. The Coalition had controlled over 300 worlds just 1 year ago. Now, they held less than 50, and the machines were coming for those too. "Ma'am," called G1 from across the room. The young scientist was hunched over her communication console, her fingers dancing across alien keyboards. "I'm getting reports from the Outer Rim. The machines have started moving toward the core worlds, where most of the Coalition's people lived, where their families waited and hoped that somehow the war would end before it reached them. Hana knew it would not end, not unless they found a miracle." "How long do we have?" she asked. Ji-won looked up from her console. Her face was grim. "At their current speed? Maybe 6 weeks before they reach the first core world. Maybe 8 if we can slow them down." But they could not slow them down. Every battle ended the same way. The Coalition. Ships would fight hard, sometimes even winning small victories. But the machines always came back with more ships, better weapons, and no casualties that mattered. When a Coalition pilot died, they lost years of training and experience. When a machine was destroyed, the Vorthak just built another one. Hana walked to the large window that looked out over New Valari, the Coalition's capital world. The city sparkled with lights from a dozen different species. Catherian crystal towers rose next to Valari biodomes. Nexus floating platforms drifted between Altran tree buildings. It was beautiful. In 6 weeks, it would all be metal. "There has to be something," she whispered. "Someone we haven't asked for help." "We've contacted everyone," Vex said behind her. "The Galactic Republic won't get involved. They say it's not their war. The Free Traders Union is too small to help. The Void Wanderers don't even answer our calls anymore." Hana nodded. She knew all this. The Coalition had spent months begging for help from every major power in the galaxy. Some had offered supplies or sanctuary for refugees. None had offered to fight. She turned back to face the room. Her senior staff looked at her with desperate hope, as if she might suddenly have an answer that would save them all. She wished she did. "What about the forbidden contacts?" she asked quietly. The room went silent. Everyone knew what she meant, but no one wanted to say it out loud. "Ma'am," Vex said carefully, "the Galactic Council has very strict rules about contacting quarantined species. The penalties will not matter if we are all dead." Hana finished. She walked back to the table and called up a new section of the galaxy map. At the edge of the screen, marked with warning symbols and barrier markers, was a small yellow star. "What do we know about Sol 3? Ji-won looked uncomfortable. "Very little, ma'am. They were quarantined 200 years ago after the incident. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the incident, though the details were classified at the highest levels. A galactic peacekeeping fleet had made contact with the species that called themselves humans. The fleet had tried to bring them into galactic civilization. 3 days later, every ship in the fleet was destroyed. Not defeated. Destroyed. Turned into floating scrap and radiation clouds. The survivors' reports had been so disturbing that the Galactic Council had immediately declared the Sol system forbidden territory. No contact, no trade, no travel. A wall of automated weapons platforms surrounded the system, programmed to destroy any ship that got too close. What did the reports say about their capabilities? Hana asked. Jiwan pulled up the old files on her console. Her hands shook as she read. They called the species deathworlders. Their planet has conditions that would kill most galactic citizens in minutes. Poisonous atmosphere, deadly radiation, extreme weather, and predators that hunt for sport instead of food. And the humans themselves? The reports are difficult to believe, ma'am. They claim the humans showed no fear of death, no surrender instinct. They fought until their ships were turned to atoms and then kept fighting with whatever pieces were left. The survivors said it was like fighting a virus that had learned to use weapons. Hana stared at the yellow star on the map. 200 years of quarantine. 200 years of silence from a species that had terrified the galaxy's greatest. Military force. Ma'am, Vex said urgently, even if we could contact them, we have no idea if they're even still alive. The quarantine sensors only detect basic radio signals. They could be extinct for all we know. Or they could be sitting behind those barriers growing stronger, Hana replied. She thought about the Vorthak machines, about the core worlds, about the children playing in New Valari's parks who might never see another sunrise. Commander. Jiwan, can you break through the Sol system's communication barriers? Jiwan's eyes went wide. Ma'am, that would be a direct violation of— Can you do it? The young scientist was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. It would take some time, and we'd have to route the signal through several relay stations to avoid detection, but yes, I think I can do it. Do it! Ma'am, Vex stepped forward. We don't even know if they speak any galactic languages. We don't know their customs or their politics. They might not help us. They might decide to help the machines instead. Hana looked at him. Commander, in 6 weeks the machines will reach the core worlds. In 3 months, they will be here. Our children will be processed into fuel, and our cities will be turned into metal. We have exhausted every option available to us. She turned back to the window. What do we have to lose by trying one more? The room was silent, except for the humming of computers and the distant sound of ships launching from the orbital platforms. More refugees, fleeing to the inner systems. Soon there would be nowhere left to run. Begin the transmission, Hana ordered. Jiwan's fingers moved across her console. Lights flashed and screens filled with data as she worked to pierce through. Barriers that had stood for 2 centuries. The other staff members watched in nervous silence. Got it, Jiwan said after nearly an hour. I have a clear channel to the Sol system. Hana stepped up to the communication console. She had no idea what she would say to a species that the galaxy had feared for 200 years. How do you ask for help from people who might be more dangerous than the enemy you're fighting? She thought about the children in the parks, about the families huddled in refugee ships, about all the worlds that had already gone silent under the Vorthak advance. Open the channel, she said. The console beeped, indicating an active connection. Somewhere across the galaxy, her words would reach the forbidden system of Sol 3. Hana took a deep breath and spoke into the void. This is Ambassador Hana of the Kepler Coalition. We are dying. We have nothing left to offer but our gratitude. Please. She ended the transmission and stepped back from the console. The message was sent. Now all they could do was wait and hope that somewhere in the darkness between the stars, someone was listening. Admiral Kyung stood on the bridge of the Soul's Wrath and watched the data streams flowing across the main display. The ship's AI had been analyzing the alien transmission for 6 hours, breaking down every word, every tone, every hint of meaning hidden in the desperate message. "Report," he said to his communications officer. "Sir, the signal originated from beyond the outer barrier, approximately 4,000 light-years from Earth. The language is Galactic Standard, which suggests they're part of the larger galactic SAO community." Lieutenant Commander Sunho paused, checking his readings. The emotional stress patterns in the voice indicate genuine desperation. Kyung nodded. He had heard the message himself when it first arrived. The alien woman's voice had carried the weight of entire worlds dying. It reminded him of the old recordings from Earth's darkest wars, when whole nations had called out for help that never came. "What do we know about this Kepler coalition?" "Very little, sir. Our long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures in their region about 4 months ago. Whatever's happening out there, it's big enough to show up on our equipment from this distance." Kyung walked to the forward viewing port and looked out at the stars. Earth hung below them, blue and white and beautiful, surrounded by the orbital defense platforms that had kept the galaxy away for 2 centuries. His people had used those years well. While the rest of the galaxy had grown comfortable and soft, humanity had prepared for war. "Sir," called Commander Do-hyun from the tactical station, "I've finished analyzing the energy signatures. The patterns match theoretical models for large-scale planet crackers and orbital bombardment systems." "Planet crackers?" Kyung turned back to face his bridge crew. "Planet crackers were weapons designed to break apart entire worlds. No sane species used them in conventional warfare. The cost was too high and the destruction too complete to be useful for conquest." "Yes, sir. But the patterns are wrong for any known galactic military. They're too regular, too efficient. It's like watching machines work." Kyung felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He had studied the reports from humanity's first contact with the galaxy. The peacekeeping fleet that had tried to pacify Earth had used similar language. Too regular, too efficient. The galaxy was full of species that fought wars like games, with rules and honor and limited objectives. Humanity fought wars to win. "Commander Nari," he said, turning to his second-in-command, "call an emergency session of the War Council. All department heads, all fleet commanders. We have a decision to make." "Sir," Nari said, "are we seriously considering responding to this message? The isolation protocols? We're designed to keep the galaxy away from us, not us away from them," Kyung finished. "If there's a threat out there big enough to use planet crackers on civilian worlds, we need to know about it." The War Council met in the secure briefing room deep inside the Soul's Wrath. 12 of humanity's most experienced military commanders sat around the table, their faces grim as they listened to the alien transmission played again. "The question," said General Minho, "is whether this is our problem. The galaxy quarantined us. Let them solve their own wars." "With respect, sir," Commander Do-hyun said, pulling up tactical displays, "this might not stay their war for long. If someone is using planet crackers on this scale, they're not interested in conquest. They're interested in extinction." The room was quiet as the implications sank in. Species that destroyed worlds instead of claiming them were rare in galactic history. When they appeared, they tended to keep going until someone stopped them. "Fleet," Commander Nari leaned forward. "What are our intelligence estimates on galactic military capabilities?" "Outdated but concerning," replied Intelligence Director Hyeri. "Based on our observations during the quarantine, most galactic militaries prioritize efficiency over effectiveness. They fight wars with minimal casualties and negotiated outcomes. They're not prepared for total warfare. And if this enemy reaches Earth, then the outer barriers won't stop them," Admiral Kyung said quietly. "Planet crackers can break through any fixed defense. We'd have to fight them ship to ship, fleet to fleet. General Minho pulled up Earth's current military status on his tablet. We have 800 active warships, ranging from frigates to dreadnoughts, 2,000 more in reserve or under construction. Marine forces number approximately 50 million, with another 100 million in the ready reserves. And how does that compare to galactic standards? Asked Commander Nari Hieri. Checked her files. According to our estimates, the entire Galactic Republic maintains fewer than 3,000 warships for police actions across 10,000 worlds. Their largest military operation in the past century involved fewer than 100 ships. The silence that followed was heavy. Humanity had been preparing for galactic warfare for 2 centuries. The galaxy apparently had been preparing for peace. "Sir," Commander Do-hyun said, "I recommend we send a reconnaissance force to assess the situation. If this threat is real, we need to understand what we're dealing with." Admiral Kyung looked around the table. Every face showed the same grim determination. Earth had spent 200 years becoming the galaxy's nightmare. Now it seemed the galaxy needed that nightmare to save it. "Captain Minho," he said finally, "prepare the stealth squadron. 12 frigates, full intelligence packages, minimal crew. I want them ready to jump in 6 hours." "Sir," Minho replied, "what are our rules of engagement?" It was a good question. Humanity's last contact with the galaxy had ended in the complete destruction of a peacekeeping fleet. How should they approach a desperate alliance request from species that might shoot them on sight? "Observe and report," Kyung said. "Do not engage unless fired upon. Do not reveal Earth's capabilities unless absolutely necessary. And if you find a threat that could reach our system—" He paused, thinking of Earth's blue skies and the children playing in its cities. "Then we activate full retaliation protocol." The room went silent. Full retaliation protocol had not been activated since the human civil wars ended 50 years ago. It meant the complete mobilization of Earth's military might, with no limits on weapons or tactics. "Sir," General Minho said carefully, "are we sure we want to get involved in an alien war?" Admiral Kyung stood and walked to the large display showing Earth from orbit. His home world, peaceful and beautiful, surrounded by the weapons that had kept it safe for 2 centuries. 200 years ago, the galaxy learned what happens when you threaten humanity, he said. Now they're asking for our help instead of demanding our surrender. That means whatever they're facing is worse than we are. He turned back to face the council. And anything worse than us is something that will eventually come for Earth. Better to fight it out there than wait for it to come here. Commander Nari nodded slowly. I'll begin preparations for fleet mobilization, just in case. Do it quietly, Kyung ordered. No general alerts, no media releases. If we're going to war, I want it to be a surprise. The meeting broke up, and officers hurried to their stations to begin preparations. Kyung remained behind, staring at the tactical displays showing Earth's defensive positions. Somewhere out there in the dark, an alien woman named Hana was waiting for an answer to her desperate plea. She was about to get one. 6 hours later, Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the stealth frigate Shadowrunner and watched the jump coordinates load into the navigation system. 11 other ships hung in formation around him, their hulls covered in the latest adaptive camouflage that made them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. All ships report ready for jump, his navigator announced. Minho looked at the stars, one last time. When he returned, humanity might be at war with an enemy they had never seen, fighting alongside allies who had once tried to destroy them. Execute jump, he ordered. The stars disappeared as the Shadowrunner and her escorts slipped into hyperspace, carrying humanity back into galactic affairs for the first time in 2 centuries. Behind them, Earth's war machine began to wake from its long sleep. In the coalition capital, Ambassador Hana stood at her window and watched the sunrise over New Valari. She had not slept since sending the message to Sol 3. No answer had come. Perhaps none would come. Perhaps the humans were extinct, or had decided that alien wars were not their concern. She was about to turn away when Ji-won's voice called across the command center. "Ma'am! I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system." Hana ran to the sensor displays. 12 contacts had appeared on the long-range scanners, moving in perfect formation toward the inner system. Their energy signatures were unlike anything in the Coalition database. "Are they Vorthak?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. The machines never moved in such small groups. "No, ma'am. These ships, they're too small to be machine vessels, but their stealth technology is beyond anything we've seen." Ji-won looked up from her console, her eyes wide with hope and fear. "Ma'am, I think someone answered our call." Captain Minho watched the alien fleet through his tactical display and felt a cold anger building in his chest. The Coalition ships were running from something that should not exist. 3 massive metal shapes hung in space like diseased moons, their surfaces covered in weapon ports and factory complexes. They were not ships. They were mobile death factories. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "I'm counting 47 Coalition vessels attempting to evacuate the 4th planet. They're heavily damaged and barely maintaining formation." "And the pursuing force?" 3 Vorthak dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small moon. They're launching attack craft. No, wait. The officer's voice became confused. "Sir, those aren't attack craft. They're mobile processing units. They're trying to capture the Coalition ships intact." Minho understood. The machines wanted the Coalition crews alive so they could be processed into fuel. It was efficient. It was logical. It was also the kind of thing that made humans stop thinking about rules of engagement and start thinking about total war. "Communications. Open a channel to the Coalition fleet. Use Galactic Standard." "Channel open, sir." Minho took a breath. First contact with an alien species was supposed to be handled by diplomats and politicians. But there were no diplomats here, only dying ships and processing machines. "Coalition vessels, this is Captain Minho of the Terran vessel Shadowrunner. We received your message. What is your situation?" The response came back immediately, the voice desperate with hope. "This is Admiral Hana of the Coalition ship Unity's Dream. We are under attack by Vorthak forces. Our engines are damaged and we cannot escape. Please, if you can help us." Minho looked at his tactical display. 12 human stealth frigates against 3 moon-sized dreadnoughts. By any reasonable calculation, it was suicide. But humans had never been particularly reasonable when it came to protecting civilians. "Admiral Hana, this is Captain Minho. We will assist. All Coalition ships, please maintain your current course and speed. Do not engage the enemy." "Captain," his weapons officer said quietly, "the enemy has detected our transmission. They're changing course toward us." On the main screen, the 3 Vorthak dreadnoughts slowly turned their massive bulk toward the human fleet. As they moved, thousands of weapon ports opened along their hulls like hungry mouths. Energy readings spiked as charging systems came online. "Sir," the sensor officer reported, "they're scanning us. The energy patterns. They're trying to categorize our ships and determine threat levels." Minho smiled grimly. The machines were about to learn that humans did not fit into standard threat categories. "All ships, this is Shadowrunner. Execute attack pattern Omega. Target the lead dreadnought's processing centers. Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to send a message." The human fleet split into 4 groups and accelerated toward the enemy. Their stealth systems were still active, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. The Vorthak dreadnoughts opened fire anyway, filling space with energy beams and missile swarms. The first human frigate, Dancing Blade, reached the lead dreadnought and did something that violated every principle of space warfare. Instead of firing from a safe distance, it rammed directly into the enemy's hull and detonated its nuclear arsenal at point-blank range. The explosion tore a hole the size of a city block in the dreadnought's side. Before the machines could respond, the second human ship, Soul's Hammer, followed the same attack pattern. Then the third. "Sir," the Coalition Admiral's voice came over the radio, filled with shock. "Your ships they're ramming the enemy." "Affirmative," Minho replied calmly as he watched his people die to save aliens they had never met. "It's called aggressive negotiation." The Vorthak dreadnoughts tried to adapt their tactics, but human ships were not following any known combat doctrine. The frigate Busan's Fury launched its entire crew in powered armor, using them as guided missiles against the enemy's sensor arrays. The destroyer Iron Will deliberately overloaded its reactor and turned itself into a miniature star. "Captain," Minho's communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the enemy. They're trying to communicate." "Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was flat and emotionless, synthesized by machines that had no understanding of life. "Unknown vessels. Cease hostile actions. Your combat patterns do not match any known tactical database. Explain your methods." Minho keyed his microphone. "Vorthak vessels. This is Captain Minho of the Terran Defense Fleet. Our methods are simple. We fight until we win or until we die. Usually, we win." "Illogical. Your ships are smaller than our attack craft. Your weapons are inferior to our defensive systems. Victory is impossible." "That's what the last people who fought us said." Minho watched his remaining ships continue their suicidal assault. Half his fleet was gone, but the lead Vorthak dreadnought was badly damaged and listing to one side. "Your machines! You think in terms of statistics and probabilities. We're humans. We think in terms of unacceptable outcomes." "Explain." "You want to process those coalition civilians into fuel. That's unacceptable to us, so we're going to stop you." The Vorthak response was immediate. All three dreadnoughts focused their fire on the remaining human ships, pouring enough energy into space to crack a planet. But the human vessels were no longer where the targeting computers expected them to be. The destroyer New Soul had shut down all systems except life support and was drifting like debris. As the Vorthak weapons swept past it, the ship suddenly came alive and launched itself at the second dreadnought's command center. "Sir," the sensor officer reported, "the Vorthak are recalculating their threat assessments. They're actually beginning to retreat." Minho watched the massive enemy ships slowly turning away from the coalition fleet. They had accomplished their mission, but at a cost the machines had not expected. 3 human ships remained operational. The Vorthak had lost 20% of their combat effectiveness on one dreadnought and suffered significant damage to the other 2. More importantly, they had learned that there were species in the galaxy that would sacrifice everything to protect strangers. "All coalition ships, this is Captain Minho. The immediate threat has passed. Are you able to make hyperspace jumps?" "Yes," Admiral Hana replied, her voice filled with gratitude and amazement. "Captain, your people, they died. For us. Why? We're strangers to you." Minho looked at the debris field where 9 human ships had died in less than 20 minutes. Good ships. Good crews. People who had volunteered to explore alien space and ended up giving their lives for aliens they had never seen. "Because you asked for help," he said simply. "And because processing civilians into fuel is something we can't allow to continue." "Captain, we don't know how to thank you. You can start by getting your people to safety. Then you can tell us everything you know about these machines." "Admiral, humanity is officially involved in this war now. And when humans go to war, we don't stop until the enemy can't fight anymore." On the coalition flagship, Admiral Hana stared at the communication console in wonder. She had sent a desperate message into the void, hoping for any response. She had received the most terrifying and reassuring answer possible. The deathworlders of Sol 3 were not extinct. They were very much alive, and they had just announced their intention to fight the Vorthak Empire. "Ma'am," Commander Jiwan said, quietly, "I'm analyzing the human combat patterns. Their ships are built differently than ours. Heavier armor, more weapons, and, ma'am, they have nuclear devices installed as standard equipment. Nuclear devices. Not for power generation, for detonation. Every human ship carries enough nuclear weapons to level a city. They use them as close-range weapons. Hana thought about the human ships ramming into the Vorthak dreadnoughts, detonating themselves without hesitation. She thought about the captain's calm voice as he described turning his reactor into a star. G1, she said slowly, send a message to the Coalition Council. Tell them we have new allies. Tell them... She paused, trying to find words to describe what she had just witnessed. Tell them the humans fight like the machines, but for life instead of death. Captain Minho's voice came over the radio again. Admiral Hana, we need to discuss strategic coordination. Our fleet commanders will want to know everything about Vorthak. Capabilities, coalition resources, and potential targets for counterattack. Counterattack? Hana asked. Captain, we've been losing this war for months. We're barely holding on to our core systems. Not anymore, Minho replied. Admiral, you asked Earth for help. You're about to get more help than you ever imagined. We'll need secure communication with your leadership and full intelligence briefings on enemy positions. How many ships can Earth provide? There was a pause on the radio. When Minho spoke again, his voice carried the weight of 2 centuries of preparation. Admiral, what you just saw was a reconnaissance force. Earth maintains active battle fleets totaling 800 warships with 2,000 more in reserve. Our marine forces number approximately 50 million combat troops. The coalition bridge went silent. Hana felt her legs go weak. 50 million. Soldiers? Her entire species numbered less than 10 million individuals. Captain, she said carefully, how large is Earth's population? Approximately 12 billion. Minho replied casually. 12 billion. Admiral Taehyun stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Verdun's Vengeance and watched 300 human warships drop out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The sight would have terrified any galactic civilization. The ships were not elegant or beautiful like most spacecraft. They were brutal, angular things designed for one purpose, to break other ships and the people inside them. Admiral, reported Captain Yeona from the tactical station, all fleet elements have arrived and are forming battle groups. The coalition observers are requesting permission to come aboard. Taehyun nodded. Ambassador Hana and her staff had been waiting 3 days for the human fleet to arrive. The reports from Captain Minho's reconnaissance had triggered Earth's full retaliation protocol, and now the galaxy was about to see what humanity looked like when it went to war. Bring them aboard. Full honors. 20 minutes later, Admiral Hana walked onto the bridge of Verdun's Vengeance and stopped dead in her tracks. The human command center was massive, easily 3 times the size of any coalition bridge. Every surface was covered with weapons displays, targeting systems, and tactical readouts. The crew moved with military precision, their voices calm and professional as they managed enough firepower to level continents. Admiral Hana, Taehyun said, stepping forward to greet her. Welcome aboard. I'm Admiral Taehyun, commanding the 1st Strike Fleet. Hana looked around the bridge in amazement. Admiral, your ship. It's enormous. How many crew members do you carry? 12,000, Taehyun replied, plus 3,000 Marines. This is just one of our standard dreadnoughts. Just one. Hana's flagship carried 800 crew members and had been considered large by coalition standards. The human ship could carry 15 times that number. Admiral, she said carefully, Captain Minho mentioned that Earth was prepared to help us fight the Vorthak. What exactly did you have in mind? Taehyun gestured to the main tactical display, which showed the current positions of Vorthak and coalition forces across a dozen systems. Red markers indicated enemy-controlled worlds. Blue markers showed coalition strongholds. There were far more red markers than blue ones. We're going to end this war, he said simply. Captain Yeona, brief our allies on the human doctrine. Yeona stepped forward, activating the holographic display system. Three-dimensional maps filled the air, showing fleet movements and battle, plans on a scale that made Hana dizzy. The human doctrine is based on the principle of overwhelming force applied at decisive points, Yeona explained. We don't fight wars to achieve limited objectives. We fight wars to ensure the enemy can never threaten us again. What does that mean in practical terms? Hana asked. It means we're going to destroy every Vorthak ship, every Vorthak facility, and every Vorthak processing center in the galaxy, Taehyun replied. Completely, Hana stared at him. Admiral, that's not how galactic warfare works. There are rules, conventions, limits on acceptable targets. The Vorthak broke those. Rules when they started processing civilians into fuel, Taehyun said coldly. They want total war? They're going to get it. The tactical display shifted, showing human fleet movements. Hana watched in growing alarm as she realized the scale of the operation. The humans weren't planning to defend coalition worlds. They were planning to attack every Vorthak position simultaneously. How is this possible? She asked. You only arrived 3 days ago. This level of coordination should take months to plan. We've been planning for 200 years, Yeona replied. Earth's War College has developed tactical scenarios for fighting every type of enemy we could imagine. Machine intelligences were scenario number 7. Before Hana could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. A new contact had appeared on the long-range sensors. Admiral, reported the sensor officer, massive energy signature dropping out of hyperspace. Sir, it's bigger than anything in our database. On the main screen, a Vorthak super dreadnought appeared. The ship was the size of a small moon, its hull covered in processing facilities and weapon batteries. As they watched, it began launching. Attack craft by the hundreds. Coalition data indicates that's a Harvester-class vessel, Hana said, her voice tight with fear. They use them to strip entire systems. We've never been able to stop one. Interesting, Taehyun said calmly. Captain Junho, take the 3rd Marine Battalion and capture that ship. Hana's eyes went wide. Admiral, did you say capture? That ship has a crew of over 1 million machines. It's impossible to board. Captain Junho, Taehyun continued, ignoring her protests. Remember that we need their command cores intact for intelligence purposes. Try not to break too much. Captain Junho, a compact man with scars across half his face, grinned. Yes, sir. How much of the ship do you want left functional? Just the data storage areas. Everything else is expendable. Hana watched in shock as human assault ships launched from the fleet. They were not the sleek fighters she was familiar with. They were ugly, armored boxes designed to ram through enemy defenses and deposit soldiers directly onto hostile ships. Admiral, she said desperately, those assault craft can't possibly penetrate a super dreadnought's defenses. The Vorthak point defense systems will destroy them before they get close. Probably, Taehyun agreed. That's why we're not trying to avoid the defenses. Captain Yeona, execute the Stalingrad maneuver. The human fleet suddenly spread into a wide formation, with the assault ships in the center and the larger warships forming a protective wall around them. As the Vorthak super dreadnought opened fire, the human vessels did something that broke every rule of space combat. They deliberately put themselves in the path of enemy fire. Hana watched in horror as human ships absorbed missile strikes and energy beams that should have destroyed them. Their armor held barely, but the real purpose became clear as the assault craft slipped through the defensive fire undetected. Why? She asked. Why are your people willing to die for a mission like this? Because the alternative is worse, Taehyun replied. If we let the machines think they can break us with superior numbers, they'll keep coming. Better to show them now that fighting humans is always more expensive than they can afford. On the tactical display, the assault craft reached the Vorthak, super dreadnought, and began cutting through its hull. What followed was not a battle, but a systematic demolition. Human marines, equipped with powered armor and nuclear charges, carved their way through the ship like a virus eating healthy tissue. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "Captain Junho reports successful breach of the command center. He's captured the primary data cores and is requesting extraction." "Negative," Tae-hyun replied. "Tell him to secure the entire ship. We're keeping it." "The entire ship?" Hana asked weakly. "We need to study Vorthak technology. This will make an excellent test subject." On the screen, the massive enemy vessel was going dark section by section as human marines systematically disabled its systems. The process took less than an hour. When it was over, a ship the size of a moon had been captured by 3,000 human soldiers. "Admiral Hana," Tae-hyun said, turning to face her, "I want you to understand something. What you just saw was a minor operation, a training exercise. The real war starts tomorrow." "Real war?" Yeona activated the strategic display, showing the locations of every known Vorthak facility in the galaxy. There were hundreds of them, scattered across 50 systems. "Tomorrow morning," Tae-hyun explained, "human fleets will arrive simultaneously at every one of these locations. We're going to destroy the entire Vorthak Empire in a single coordinated strike." Hana stared at the display. "That's impossible." "You'd need thousands of ships, perfect coordination across hundreds of light years, and—" "We have 4,000 ships," Tae-hyun interrupted, "and we've been coordinating military operations across interstellar distances since before your species achieved spaceflight. But the casualties, the cost—" "Will be acceptable," Tae-hyun said firmly. "Admiral, your people called for help. You asked us to save you from an enemy that processes civilians into fuel. We're going to do exactly that, but we're going to do it our way." He turned back to the tactical display, where human ships were already moving into position for the next phase of the operation. "The Vorthak Empire has existed for 3,000 years. They've conquered half the galaxy and never been seriously challenged." Tae-hyun's voice was cold and professional. "Tomorrow, they cease to exist." Hana looked around the bridge at the human officers calmly preparing for what could only be described as the largest military operation in galactic history. They showed no fear, no hesitation, no doubt about their ability to destroy an empire that had terrified the galaxy for millennia. "Admiral," she said quietly, "what if you're wrong? What if the Vorthak are stronger than you think?" Tae-hyun smiled, and for the first time, Hana understood why the galaxy had quarantined Sol 3. It was not the smile of a civilized being. It was the smile of a predator that had found its prey. "Admiral Hana," he said, "there's something you need to understand about humans. We don't start fights we can't finish. And once we start fighting, we don't stop until the enemy can't fight back." He gestured to the captured super dreadnought on the display. "The Vorthak just learned what it means to fight a species that considers war to be a final solution rather than a political tool. Tomorrow, the rest of the—" Captain Chanwoo stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Incheon's Fury and watched 16 Vorthak worlds burn at the same time. The tactical display showed the results of Operation Hammerblow, synchronized strikes on every major Vorthak facility in the galaxy, all executed within a 6-hour window. "Sir," reported his weapons officer, "the Nova bombs have reached their targets in the Kepler-78 system. All Vorthak installations are confirmed destroyed." Chanwoo nodded. Nova bombs were weapons that turned stars into temporary supernovas, sterilizing entire solar systems. The Galactic Council had banned them 2,000 years ago after the Andromedan War. Humanity had improved the design and built 1,000 of them. "What about the civilian populations on the outer worlds?" he asked. "Evacuated 6 hours before the strikes, sir. The refugee ships are already en route to coalition territory." That was the difference between human warfare and Vorthak warfare. The machines processed civilians into fuel. Humans evacuated them first, then turned their worlds into radiation. "Clouds." "Captain," his communications officer called. "We're receiving reports from the other strike groups. Operation Hammerblow is 97% successful. The Vorthak Empire has lost approximately 80% of their fixed installations. Chan Wu looked at the galactic map, where red markers were disappearing by the dozens. 3,000 years of Vorthak expansion, erased in less than a day. But he knew the machines would not surrender. They would adapt, regroup, and continue, fighting until every last unit was destroyed. "Sir, incoming transmission from Admiral Taehyun aboard Verdun's Vengeance." "Put him through." Taehyun's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim but satisfied. "Captain Chanwoo, excellent. Work on the Kepler strikes. How are your ships holding up?" "All vessels operational, sir. Some minor damage from radiation exposure, but nothing our repair systems can't handle." Chanwoo paused. "Admiral, are we really going to continue this to complete extermination?" "Yes," Taehyun replied without hesitation. "The Vorthak have shown they cannot coexist with organic life. This ends only when their last processor is scrap metal." It was a harsh decision, but Chanwoo understood the logic. Humans had learned long ago that some enemies could not be negotiated with, reformed, or contained. They could only be eliminated. "Sir, what about the coalition observers? How are they handling our methods?" Taehyun's expression softened slightly. "About as well as expected. Ambassador Hana is struggling with the concept of total warfare, but she's beginning to understand that half measures won't work against an enemy like this." On the coalition flagship Unity's Dream, Ambassador Hana stood in the observation deck and watched human ships systematically destroying everything the Vorthak had built. It was the most horrifying and beautiful sight she had ever seen. "Ma'am," Commander Jiwon said quietly, "the humans have just eliminated more Vorthak infrastructure in one day than we managed to damage in 6 months of fighting." Hana nodded absently. The efficiency was staggering. Every human strike had been perfectly coordinated, hitting maximum damage points with minimum force expenditure. It was like watching a master surgeon remove a cancer. "Jiwon," she said, "run a statistical analysis on human combat losses versus Vorthak losses." "Already done, ma'am." The humans have destroyed approximately 40,000 Vorthak vessels and facilities while losing fewer than 200 ships of their own. 200 to 40,000. Hana let the numbers sink in. "How is that possible?" "Their tactics. Ma'am, they don't fight fair. They use weapons the Vorthak can't adapt to, strike from directions that shouldn't be possible, and coordinate attacks across impossible distances." Jiwon paused. "Ma'am, I don't think the Vorthak understand what they're fighting." Before Hana could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. On the tactical display, a massive energy signature was approaching the system. "What is it?" Hana asked. "Unknown, ma'am. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen. Bigger than the Vorthak superdreadnoughts." On the human fleet channel, Captain Chanwoo's voice crackled with excitement. "All units, this is Incheon's Fury. We have a priority target incoming. Looks like the Vorthak are sending us their home ship." The home ship. Hana had heard whispers of it, but never believed it existed. According to legend, it was a mobile world where the original Vorthak consciousness resided. A planet-sized vessel that served as both command center and factory for the entire machine empire. "Captain Chanwoo," Admiral Taehyun's voice came over the radio, "you are authorized to use planet killers. This target is too important to risk. Escape. Planet killers." Hana felt her blood turn cold. Those were weapons designed to crack worlds in half. The humans were planning to use them on a ship. "Sir," Chanwoo replied, "planet killers might not be enough for a target this size. Request permission to use the Dimensional Ripper." There was a pause on the channel. Even the humans seemed to consider that weapon extreme. "Permission granted," Taehyun said finally, "but only if conventional weapons fail. The Dimensional Ripper is messy." Hana grabbed Jiwon's arm. "What's a Dimensional Ripper?" Jiwon checked her database, her face going pale as she read. "Ma'am, it's a weapon that tears holes in space-time. It erases things from reality. The Vorthak home ship dropped out of hyperspace, and Hana understood why the humans were considering their most extreme weapons. The vessel was the size of Earth's moon, its surface covered in processing facilities, weapon batteries, and construction yards. As they watched, it began launching attack craft by the millions. "All human vessels," Chanwu announced, "execute attack pattern Omega-7. Target the enemy's primary processing centers. Remember, we want them gone, not captured." What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration of what happened when a species that had spent 2 centuries preparing for galactic warfare encountered an enemy that had grown complacent through millennia of easy victories. The human fleet split into 12 attack groups, each one moving with perfect coordination, despite being separated by thousands of kilometers. The Vorthak home ship opened fire, filling space with enough energy to vaporize planets. The human ships flew directly into the firestorm. "They're going to be destroyed," Hana whispered. But the human vessels had been built for exactly this kind of warfare. Their armor held against weapons that should have turned them to plasma. Their shields deflected energy beams that could crack moons. And when their defenses finally failed, the ships kept fighting. The destroyer Soul's Pride lost its engines and half its hull to a direct hit from the home ship's main cannon. Instead of retreating, it used its remaining thrusters to ram into the enemy's command section and detonate its nuclear arsenal at point-blank range. The cruiser Gangnam's Wrath was surrounded by Vorthak attack craft. Rather than try to escape, it activated something called a fusion pulse that turned the ship into a miniature star for 3 seconds. When the light faded, the cruiser was gone, but so were 10,000 enemy fighters. "Sir," reported the weapons, "officer aboard Incheon's Fury, conventional weapons are not achieving sufficient damage. The target's armor is too thick." Chanwu looked at the massive enemy vessel, still launching fighters despite the damage it had taken. Hundreds of human ships had died to get this close to the Vorthak command center. It was time to end this. "Load the Dimensional Ripper," he ordered. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "are we sure about this? Once we use it, there's no going back." Chanwu thought about the coalition worlds the Vorthak had processed, about the billions of civilians turned into fuel, about the children who would never grow up because machines thought efficiency was more important than life. "Fire," he said. The Dimensional Ripper was not like other weapons. It did not explode or burn or tear things apart. It simply made them cease to exist. One moment, the Vorthak home ship was there, a massive monument to machine efficiency and organic hatred. The next moment, there was only empty space and confused starlight. The silence on the communication channels was complete. Even the humans seemed stunned by what they had just witnessed. "All units," Admiral Taehyun's voice finally broke the silence. "This is Verdun's vengeance. The Vorthak home ship has been eliminated. Begin search and destroy operations on all remaining enemy vessels." What followed was not war, but cleanup. Scattered Vorthak ships tried to flee or fight, but without their central command, they were just individual machines facing the combined might of Earth's war fleets. The outcome was never in doubt. On the coalition flagship, Ambassador Hana stared at the empty space where the Vorthak home ship had been. 3,000 years of machine empire erased in an instant by a weapon that deleted things from reality. "Ma'am," Jiwon said quietly, "I'm receiving reports from across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire has collapsed. All their major installations are destroyed, their fleets are scattered, and their command structure no longer exists." "How long?" Hana asked. 6 months, ma'am. The war lasted 6 months. The humans ended it in 1 day. Hana nodded slowly. The Kepler coalition was safe. Their worlds would not be processed into fuel. Their children would grow up under natural suns instead of metal towers. But the price of that safety was the knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, There was a species capable of erasing enemies from existence itself. G1, she said finally, send a message to the... 3 months after the last Vorthak ship was turned to scrap metal, Ambassador Seojin stood in the Coalition Council chambers and watched 7 different species debate the future of the galaxy. The war was over, but nobody seemed to know what came next. The humans refused to accept any payment for their assistance, Senator Crix of the Altran Collective was saying. They claimed they fought to protect organic life, not for profit. How do we repay such a debt? Perhaps, suggested Councillor Vex, we should ask what they want instead of what we can give them. Seojin smiled slightly. After 6 months of working with coalition leaders, she had learned that most galactic species thought in terms of trade and negotiation. They could not understand why humans would fight a war for strangers without expecting compensation. Honored councillors, she said, standing to address the assembly, if I may speak for Earth's position on this matter. The chamber fell silent. Seojin was the first human diplomat most of them had ever seen, and her presence still made them nervous. She was small by human standards, barely reaching Admiral Tae-hyun's shoulder, but she carried herself with the same quiet confidence that made human soldiers so effective. Earth requires no payment for our assistance, she began. We fought the Vorthak because they represented a threat to organic life everywhere. Protecting innocent people is not a business transaction. But surely, Senator Crix pressed, there must be something we can offer. Technology sharing? Trade agreements? Resource extraction rights? Seojin looked around the chamber at the earnest faces of beings who had never understood warfare as anything but a means to an end. They could not grasp the concept of fighting, simply because it was the right thing to do. There is one thing Earth would like, she said finally. The room leaned forward expectantly. Here it came, the price of their salvation. We want to be left alone. The silence that followed was complete. Senator Crix blinked his large eyes in confusion. I'm sorry, Ambassador. Did you say... left alone? The isolation protocols that have kept Earth quarantined for 2 centuries will remain in effect, Seojin explained. We will maintain diplomatic relations with the Coalition and respond to requests for assistance in existential threats, but we have no interest in joining galactic civilization. Councillor Vex stood slowly. Ambassador, with respect, that seems unwise. Your people have demonstrated capabilities that could benefit the entire galaxy. Medical technology, defensive systems, scientific research, all of which we will continue to develop in isolation. Seojin replied firmly. Counselor, humanity appreciates the Coalition's gratitude, but we prefer to manage our own affairs. What she did not say, but everyone in the room understood, was that Earth preferred to manage the galaxy's affairs as well. The human war machine had not disbanded after the Vorthak defeat. If anything, it had grown stronger, preparing for the next threat that might emerge from the dark spaces between stars. In the Coalition Intelligence Center, analyst Minji stared at the reports flowing across her screen and felt a growing sense of unease. 3 months of studying human behavior had taught her things she wished she did not know. Commander Jiwon, she called. You need to see this. Jiwon walked over to Minji's workstation and looked at the data analysis. Her face grew pale as she read. These are the fleet movements from the war? She asked. Yes, ma'am. I've been tracking human ship deployments during the Vorthak campaign. Minji highlighted sections of the report. Commander, they never used more than 40% of their available forces. Jiwon sat down heavily. What do you mean? I mean they defeated the Vorthak Empire using less than half their military. The other 60% never left Earth space. Minji pulled up more data. And that's not the worst part. There's worse? The humans are still building ships. Their production facilities have actually increased output since the war ended. They're preparing for something bigger than the Vorthak. Jiwon stared at the numbers. If humans could destroy a 3,000-year-old empire using less than half their strength, what could they do at full capacity? And what kind of threat were they expecting that would require even more preparation? Minji, she said quietly, classify this analysis at the highest security level. And don't share it with our human allies. I don't think they want us to know how powerful they really are. On Earth, Fleet Commander Nari stood in the Strategic Planning Center and reviewed the post-war assessments with her senior staff. The Vorthak campaign had been a complete success, but it had also revealed weaknesses in human preparations. The Dimensional Ripper worked perfectly, General Minho reported, but it drew more power than expected. If we face multiple planet-sized targets, we'll need improved energy generation. The Nova bombs were effective, added Admiral Kyung, but the delivery systems were vulnerable to massed point defense. We need better penetration aids. Nari nodded as she made notes. Humans had won the war decisively, but they had also learned that the galaxy contained threats they had not fully anticipated. The Vorthak had been machines. The next enemy might be something worse. What about the coalition? She asked. How? Are they adapting to our methods? They're grateful but nervous, replied Intelligence Director Hayeri. They understand that we saved them, but they're also beginning to realize what kind of species they've allied themselves with. Are they a threat? No, Hayeri said immediately. They're peaceful by nature and completely outclassed technologically. But they're starting to ask uncomfortable questions about our capabilities. Nari looked at the galactic map, where coalition territory was marked in blue and the former Vorthak Empire was marked in black. Empty now, waiting for someone to claim it. Let them ask questions, she said finally. As long as they remember that we're their protectors, not their conquerors. Back on the coalition capital world, Daeho finished his report on human military doctrine and leaned back in his chair. As the coalition's new military advisor, he had been tasked with understanding how humans fought so effectively. The answer was both simple and terrifying. They don't fight wars, he wrote in his final assessment. They fight extinctions. Every tactic, every weapon, every strategic decision is designed not just to defeat the enemy, but to ensure the enemy can never threaten them again. He thought about the dimensional weapons that erased things from reality, about the Nova bombs that turned stars into weapons, about the casual way human officers had discussed acceptable casualties in the millions. Recommendation, he continued writing, maintain friendly relations with Earth at all costs. Ensure that humanity never perceives the coalition as a threat. Their definition of existential danger appears to be much broader than ours. Ambassador Hana stood on her balcony and watched the sunset over New Valari. The city was alive again, its lights twinkling in the growing darkness. Children played in the parks, families walked the streets without fear. The Vorthak were gone, and organic life was safe. But safety had come with a price that few understood. Humanity had not just defeated the machines, they had demonstrated capabilities that made them the most powerful force in the galaxy. And they had done it while holding back most of their strength. Ma'am, Jiwon said, approaching from behind, the latest intelligence reports from Earth. Hana took the data pad and read the summary. Human ship construction had increased by 300% since the war ended. Their military was expanding, not demobilizing. They were preparing for something even worse than the Vorthak. Jiwon, she said quietly, what kind of threat would require this level of preparation? I don't know, ma'am, but I think the humans do. Hana nodded slowly. Earth's isolation made more sense now. They were not hiding from the galaxy. They were protecting it from threats it could not imagine, and they were making sure they would be ready when those threats emerged from the dark. The communication console in her office chimed, indicating an incoming message from Earth. Hana activated the display and saw Ambassador Seojin's face appear on the screen. Ambassador Hana, Seojin said, I wanted to personally thank you for your cooperation during the transition period. The Terran Coalition Mutual Defense Pact has been ratified by our respective governments. Thank you, Ambassador. The Coalition is honored to have Earth as an ally. There is one thing I wanted to clarify, Seojin continued. The Defense Pact includes a provision for human military response to existential threats against Coalition members. However, we reserve the right to define what constitutes an existential threat. Hana understood. Humanity would decide when the Coalition was in danger and how to respond to that danger. It was not truly an alliance between equals, it was a protection arrangement. Of course, she replied. We trust Earth's judgment in such matters. Seojin smiled, and Hana was reminded once again that humans could be both terrifying and reassuring at the same time. Excellent. Oh, and Ambassador? Tell your people not to worry about the increased military construction. We're just preparing for the future. The transmission ended, leaving Hana alone with her thoughts. The Vorthak War was over, but the galaxy had gained something far more dangerous than machine overlords. They had gained protectors who fought with nuclear fire and dimensional weapons, guardians who could erase enemies from existence itself. The Coalition was safe. Their children would grow up in peace, but they would